part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast for the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chase Smith, and with me we have the whole entire squad lined up, ready to go. We got your Cavs end of season recap. We're going to talk about the play-in game. We're going to touch on how this team has just transformed before our very eyes from last year. We're going to hear from Kobe Altman, not on the pod, but talking about the offseason, kind of what that looks like. He had a presser today, Tuesday the 19th. We're talking about Colin Sexton. Here to help me talk about all that, my favorite people, Sam Amico, Jeremy in Akron, and John Say. Well, fellas, what's going on?
Not a whole heck of a lot. Just we missed you 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. You were here last week. Sorry.
It's okay.
I guess I forgot.
Full confidence and you all to do your thing, and it was incredible. John, Jay, what's going on, guys?
Not much, just kind of bummed, but we kind of predicted the ending, and it's just now we're in off-season mode. It's just the Cavs still had a great year. We'll get into that, but I mean, we're not all that surprised.
No.
And now that it's over, I'm actually kind of excited we have a pick to talk about. So
yeah, and we will talk about that off-season after the break. But let's touch on just very briefly this play-in tournament mini series that the NBA is throwing out here. Guys, I don't know if you noticed, the Cavs went 3-9 over the last 12 games, including the play-in tournament. Just sputtered down the stretch, injuries or not. They couldn't get it done in Brooklyn, and then they fall to, I'm just going to say that Trae Young beat them in Cleveland. We didn't want to play the Hawks. We said we preferred it. We all said we prefer to play Charlotte. We saw the threat that the Hawks brought with their playoff experience and with Trae Young, who was far and away leagues the best player on the court in the play-in game. Sam, I mean, it wasn't even close.
No, it wasn't close. I think, the Cavs' misfortune really was having to play Brooklyn in that first game. You're talking about a team that has the ability to win the championship. I don't think they will, but they have that, they have guys in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant who have been there before. They've both won championships, and they were both huge in that game. And it just so happened that the Nets had key injuries, and Kyrie missing home games during a big portion of the regular season, that they would have fallen to seventh, and that's just a tall order right there. And then you come home and you play the Hawks, and Jared Allen returns, and you run into a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a team that and won a Game 7 in Philly on the road to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, it was just a matter of, again, as I said before, veteran teams step up at this time of year, and younger teams tend to fade, and that was what happened with the Cavs. And you throw in the injury to Allen, and it was just too much to overcome.
John, the Cavs had to withstand a perfect half from Kyrie Irving, and then almost just as perfect half from Trae Young. The Cavs were up by as many as 14 against the Hawks at home, and they couldn't seal the deal, man.
They couldn't. And, you had Trae Young had 6 points in the first half,
mm-hmm.
and then just exploded.
It's unbelievable.
With 32 in the second half. And if my math's correct, that's 38 points.
Yeah.
But I mean, here's the thing. The offense just sputtered. I mean, you needed more options. Garland couldn't do everything, and he didn't do everything. And, you just had a bunch of guys in there that still weren't producing, guys that we have all talked about here countless times this year, especially in the last few weeks, of guys that we weren't sure to see what they were going to do. And, we can get into it, but Isaac Okoro, again, was still in witness protection, nowhere to be found. coming off the bench in the minutes that he had. And I mean, you're all 5 players the Cavs had that started were all in double figures. They had 9 bench points, and Love only played 10 minutes in the entire game. I think JB Bickerstaff's rotations there were, again, questionable. I don't know if he handled it well, but keep in mind, this was his first game too. This was basically a pseudo playoff game. So you're with a young group, a young rookie head coach in a way when it comes to the postseason, and the inexperience definitely showed.
Yep. Jeremy, the Cavs did get Jared Allen back for this final playing game against the Hawks. Not much of an impact. Can I say that?
No, I'll disagree. I thought he, I thought it was gutsy. And I don't know if you noticed a couple of the dunks, he went up two-handed and let go before he hit the rim with the second hand. So obviously he was in some pain. I thought he came out and looked great. I think he played about the first 5 minutes of that first quarter and looked good. But I mean, look, you got to think, Chase, he's been out for a month and a half. It's a different speed anyway in a sort of pseudo playoff game. Getting your legs underneath you, all that for just a situation. I thought he was gutsy, and I thought he played really well. And he did everything he could to help. Now, we knew he'd be limited coming in. We knew there'd be a limited amount of what he could actually do, but I thought he was gutsy, and I thought he did help.
We've been talking all season that we've been playing with house money, and any experience in the playoffs is what this team needs. This isn't a failed season because no one expected them to be this good this year, but being as high as the 4 seed, guys, we had all talked to the podcast. I asked this question: can the Cavs win 60 games? That was a question I legitimately asked us in one of the episodes. To now they're not in the playoffs. Like, is it okay to be disappointed?
I think it is, but Chase, when you asked that question, wasn't that right around the LeVert trade?
No, that was a couple weeks before. Like, that was when everyone was dealing with COVID and injuries, and the Cavs hadn't had a ton of huge injuries yet.
Yeah, that's right. But no one could have predicted that every single player in their starting lineup and most of their bench would get hurt,
Right.
and that's, I hate using that as an excuse, but it's the Cavs didn't, they collapsed, whatever. Injuries made them collapse. I mean, you don't lose all your players and expect an inexperienced team to go far after that. At the time when we talked about it, I don't know if they were going to win 60, but I definitely thought they had an outside shot of getting in to at least maybe the 3rd seed, but definitely the 4th and 5th.
Well, I'm disappointed, damn it.
Well, I'll tell you, I knew, I had a feeling, even if completely healthy roster, they were going to fade a little bit. Again, just from seeing teams that are young tend to do that toward the end of the year, while the veteran teams step up, just having been in those situations. But I think on the bright side that both of those games, the Brooklyn game and the Hawks game, kind of served almost as game 7s for the Cavs, and that experience was great. And look, if they had, I think, their fully healthy roster, they would have finished ahead of the Bulls. They would have been in the 6th spot. And, the bottom line too is, now we have a play-in tournament. I put a poll out on Twitter. Do you like it or don't you? Most of my followers on Twitter are Cavs fans, and they still said they like it, which they just like the extra excitement it brings, I guess.
Of course.
But I will say this.
I am the voice of the people, Sam. That's me.
No
one else I serve as the voice of the people.
Sam, I was one of the ones that disagreed and didn't like it.
Yeah, right. I read your tweets, unlike you with mine.
Hey, that's not fair. I read your column today before you were texting about it.
Before I told you to?
Yeah, I didn't even give you guys the OG intro. I didn't tell you anyone what you guys did, what you guys on. I just said you guys are here. Everyone could probably do it themselves at this point.
Well, we were introduced as your friends.
Aww.
Which I think
he's trying to cheer me up because I'm so disappointed, Jeremy. We didn't make the playoffs, man.
let me say this. What was the thing that made the Cavs unique when we were on that run, when we looked like one of the best teams?
Ricky
Our twin
Rubio.
towers on defense, right? Well, Ricky Rubio on offense. Early in the year, yes, the ball movement really took a hit when Rubio left. We were steamrolling teams. The offense looked great. The ball never stuck, as they say. It moved, and I think Rubio's a big part of that. The other thing was, though, 2 7-footers that can guard multiple positions. When we lost one of those 7-footers, who was our better defender, the defense changed. It changed drastically. You can't undersell. You can't. It's just it was so imperative that how important it was, the loss of Jared Allen, because of that exact reason, that he can guard 5 positions and guard them well. You can do all these switches, and then you have Mobley, who can do almost the same thing. And that's why the defense just wasn't right for the last month and a half. And it wasn't going to be right for one game, getting him back for one game at that point. And Karis LeVert never fit in. And I don't think that's fully Karis's fault. He's taken a ton of heat all over Twitter, and it's got to be at least somewhat JB's fault. And I love JB. I think you guys probably saw me on Twitter going to war with people over JB the other day, because I think he's a great coach, and I don't think we'd be in the position we are right now without him. But I think the Karis LeVert issue wasn't just Karis, and losing Jared Allen was so huge. Do you have the right to be disappointed, Chase? Yeah, obviously, you have the right to be disappointed. We all have the right to be disappointed. But I just think sometimes it's an excuse to talk about injuries, but with this, it's a reason. There's the reason we were where we were at the end of the year was because of injuries.
Without the play-in tournament, by the way, without the play-in tournament, they would have been in loss. They would have been the 8th.
Right, and we're in.
And that's one of my gripes with that play-in tournament, because the Cavs would have been an 8th seed team, and they would have had a full 7-game series, or full 4 games at least in a series to get extra reps. And I said this to Sam about why I don't like it. And we mentioned this in the last pod, why I don't like the play-in tournament. The fact that the stats don't count. Yeah, they don't count for anything. No, not regular season, not post-game or postseason. They're glorified exhibition game that just happens to have a playoff berth on the line. I think that's silly.
And Sam, when's the last time a Eastern Conference team won 44 games and didn't make the playoffs?
Boy, that's been a while, because the East has not been good. There's been a lot of times where teams that have won 36 or whatever, have gotten in. So I mean, neither of the Clippers were the 8th seed out west. They didn't get in either. So I mean, that's just part of the tournament. It gives the extra people extra teams a shot. But
I am disappointed, but I am not discouraged. I'm very optimistic, and I have a lot of good things to say. Can I tell you why I'm not discouraged?
Please.
Oh my gosh. All right, here we go. Darius Garland belongs. He did the best he could to bring us back against the Brooklyn game. He went I don't want to say toe-to-toe with Trey, because Trey was above and beyond better, but Darius didn't look overmatched. He looked like he belonged. He looked like one of the top point guards in the league. And that gets me excited. We have one of the best players at one of the most important positions in this generation of the NBA. You need a star point guard more than a star shooting guard, more than a star big man. You need that star top tier point guard. And in my opinion, Darius Garland showed that he can be that guy. So I'm not discouraged. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Chase. I think that he's
not an amen. Sam's.
Oh, well, yeah, amen. But I agree with you. I think that it is probably, now, unless you have LeBron James in his prime and Dwayne Wade in his prime and Chris Bosh in their prime, then you can roll out Norris Cole. But
I think with how the NBA is played now and the emphasis on the long ball, you have to have a star point guard.
Yeah, right. And you do in the sense that especially with the way the Cavs are built, because you've got to find a guy who's going to get those big guys in Allen and Mobley and Markkanen the ball where they like it. And Garland flourished in that area.
Darius Garland belongs. Another reason why I'm not discouraged, this year we have a candidate for Rookie of the Year in Evan Mobley, candidate for Most Improved Player of the aforementioned Darius Garland, and a potential 6th Man of the Year in Kevin Love. Sam, last year we gave an autopsy report for the team. They were awful. They were dead. We had to figure out why. And now there's new life. They're alive. I'm not discouraged. We have a future. We have a future. And now I don't know if any of them are going to win, guys, but the fact that there are 3 Cavs up for those like huge awards, that's all. I'm not discouraged. I'm encouraged.
Kevin Love isn't going to win Sixth Man of the Year, but one of the reasons we had the autopsy report was because of Kevin Love.
That is
and his contract anchoring down the roster. And then he went through the summer where he just was an embarrassment with Team USA. And I think we all assumed bad things about him coming into the season. So the fact that he turned it around was a huge part of it. Granted, he didn't play very much against the Hawks, but he, the regular season, he was just, and even against Brooklyn, he was just the fact that he turned it around was a big key to this year's success.
And I think a lot of that credit has to go to JB. He's the one that convinced Love to take a bench role. He's the one that convinced him to buy into the system and buy into his new role. Love has stated many times without JB, he probably wouldn't have been able to be comfortable in his role and with this team. And, it just goes to a testament of another player wanting to play for JB Bickerstaff, which I know he wasn't going to win Coach of the Year. I thought he should have at least been a finalist. The fact that he wasn't, I thought was kind of a joke.
Well, I think the crappy end of the year. Like I think if they would have finished
it did. If they would have got a playoff, then probably Eric Spoelstra is going to get kicked out of that top 3, in my opinion. The fact that they fell apart is an easy way not to vote him in. I get it. Unfair, but I get it. Again, the injuries thing. But Love. I don't know if Love will win that award either. Yeah. Mobley, I think, will win Rookie of the Year.
I'm so glad you mentioned him because one of the so we had 2 causes of death in our autopsy report last. You can go back and listen to it. Do it. It's a lot of fun. We said the veterans, K-Love, and this is taken right from my notes, Sam. Front office nearsightedness and foresightedness. Like we just were like crapping on the office for ruining the Drummond situation, for not letting out, like just how they handled all that stuff. And it's been a complete 180 in the front office too.
Yeah, without question. I mean, there was none of those little Andre Drummond, Kevin Porter Jr.'s, none of those those were major things. They had none of that.
No.
And they had reason to have some of it because they were going through injuries and, playing time had to be juggled. And, guys like Jetty were coming off the bench or not playing at all. Okoro was starting and then he wasn't playing very much, but they managed to contain those things that can get to teams. And you're right. It was just the complete opposite of last season. We didn't hear one iota of drama. It was all, good news all the time. Everybody's happy, which is very rare when you're playing an 82 game schedule with a bunch of young guys. So kudos to Kobe Altman, because you're right, Chase. We really took them to task last year, the front office.
Jeremy, before we go to break, I want to ask all of you this question. I'm going to start with Jeremy because he's just catching up on Twitter. He's getting back. He's getting back to a swing of things. Help him find his footing here. Jeremy, describe this Cavs season in one tweet right now.
I would say exciting but incomplete, right? It was an exciting season, but we kind of were left wanting more, right? Mm-hmm. So exciting but incomplete, but like you said, you were just, maybe a little bit discouraged, but the future's bright, right? I mean, the future's bright, obviously. I don't think anybody can debate the fact that the Cavs future is bright.
Well, that was way more than 240 characters, but I hear what you're saying. It's all right. You're still getting used to it. I know Twitter hasn't changed that much. Mr. Sable, what you got, man?
Man, I like the incomplete. I think Jeremy nailed it. Man, I mean, it was exciting. It was thrilling, but you had that taste. You wanted more. You're not going to get it now until November.
Yep.
or October, whenever the season starts.
Sam, you have
I don't know.
anything? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but here's the thing. That's okay. This fan base needs that. They need to have that feeling because it's been a long, like 4 or 5 years since LeBron left, where you were teased with something good, and then now this is an organically built team, which we haven't seen like this in a long time, probably since the late 80s, early 90s Cavs teams that were built this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't help but be really excited and appreciative of the guys and the character of the players that they have.
Yeah. Sam, you have anything in the drafts you want to drop us with right here? This Cavs season in one tweet?
Well, I think you just quote Kobe Altman, and he said today, at the press conference, which we'll talk about after the break, people realize we have something special brewing here in Northeast Ohio. Now, can we keep that hunger? Because we haven't done anything yet. So that's a big key is keeping the hunger. So the tweet would just be the Kobe Altman quote. It wouldn't be all my random comments, just so it fits.
Your random dribbles.
Random dribbles. Hey, thank you.
Hey, there we go.
Somebody knows what they're called.
Hoopswire.com. Hey, well,
how about 3 words? Learning, or 2 words? Learning and growing.
That was still 3. You said and.
I guess that would be 3. Yeah.
I really loved the, like, we haven't done anything yet, right? Like, we don't want them to think because they have all this potential and this young core that they need to think that they arrive next year because they haven't done anything. It might be best if no one wins an award, right? Like, keep that carrot in front of those players. I loved, and we're going to go to a break in a second. The telecast, I don't think gave credit, at least the ESPN telecast, to the fans sticking around, showing their appreciation to the team after the game. There were some fans leaving. Trey was waving them by, right? But it seemed to be a pretty large crowd sticking around after that Hawks game, that just to say thank you.
I mean, yeah, they're appreciative. They're happy. They're disappointed though. What did you guys think, by the way, of Trae Young shimmying on the court and saying goodbye and all that? Did it bother you, Jeremy? I know it bothered Jeremy.
No, it didn't bother me, but you know what I like about Trae Young is he's kind of turning into that villain, right? He always goes into New York and lights up and he lets you know about it. So I kind of like it.
I didn't mind it. I thought it was
I didn't think
funny.
it was too over the top. I didn't think it was right. Exactly. It wasn't like he was flicking off the crowd to Kyrie and like flicking off the crowd and stuff. He was just kind of being a showman, and he earned it, right? I mean, you go out and score 32 points to knock a team out of the playoffs on their home court. You earned the right to show a little bit of
you can do whatever you want if you did that. It didn't bother me. I like Trae Young a lot. But hey, Sam, I don't want to get your point on this. Doesn't he kind of starting to remind you a little bit of Steph Curry?
Yeah, which is interesting because I'm with you guys. I like Trae Young. I enjoy watching him play, and he always seems like a pretty good interview. And I don't care for Steph Curry very much.
I don't either.
Which is probably because it was a finals. It was a bigger deal. Maybe that's why I don't care for Steph very much. But I do like Trae Young. It didn't bother me that he waved goodbye
because Steph will shimmy in in Oklahoma City in the middle of like December when it doesn't matter.
Right.
And he'll have the mouth guard hanging out. Like, dude, like, stop.
Yeah. I think Trae Young is probably a little bit tougher. I know that sounds crazy. Steph's a better player, but I'm
going to clip that. I'm clipping it.
I just think he's a little
right,
tougher. Though. I do. He'll go inside. He's willing to get hit. He'll get in your face. We saw him get into it with Jimmy Butler the other day. I just have and I don't get me wrong, I respect Steph and the way he plays, but I just think Trae has a little bit of an edge to him that Steph doesn't.
I could see that. I definitely can see that. And durable wise, he's much more durable than Steph.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I get that too. When you say it at first, it's like, ooh, makes sense. Yeah, I kind of agree there.
So who does Darius Garland whose play does he remind you of?
I see Chris Paul.
Okay.
Which is funny because a lot of people actually comp him as Steph Curry, right? But I think you're right. He's especially if you notice as the year went on, especially into these play-in games, he played like a little more under control, a little more, maybe a little slower pace, but in control pace, which I actually like for him. I think he's kind of his own guy, though. I mean, some people even, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, have compared him a little bit to Mark Price's game.
That would
right?
be who I would compare him to.
He's got a little bit of Mark Price's game,
yeah.
Chris Paul. Maybe, I think maybe the shot, people thought maybe he'd end up being a little more of a scorer, sort of like Steph, because he does have that nice touch from outside. But I would say I think both these guys are right. Chris Paul and a little bit of Mark Price.
And when he's doing those pick and rolls with J.A. and Mobley, you can't help but see Mark Price.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he does a nice job of splitting double teams, which Mark Price, Kenny Smith, I heard him on TNT, said that Mark Price and Steph were probably the two best he's ever seen do that.
And Shaq said the same thing.
Yeah, and Darius Garland is outstanding at that as well.
Well, you all are outstanding. We're going to take a break, come back, talk about some of the offseason goals for the Cavs. We're going to hear from Coach Bickerstaff, and then we're going to spend a few moments talking about Colin Sexton. We didn't mention him at all the first half. We're going to talk about him a little bit. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Voorhees.
And I'm Brian Shaw. No, not the pitcher. We're the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast.
Formerly known as the Swing in a Tribe.
Don't have time to watch 162 games of baseball? We have you covered with recaps, stats, and analysis throughout the MLB season.
Subscribe now to Guardians of the Land MLB podcast and Press Play Podcast Network for all your Cleveland sports analysis.
What's good, everybody? My name is Taylor Vanderbilt, and I'm the host of the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. On the Full 40, we talk about literally everything college basketball related. It could be women's, it could be men's, it could be recruiting, it could be the tournament. It does not matter. We cover it all. So check it out. Again, it's the Full 40 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary.
And I'm Jason. Opening cards as a kid, no matter what was in the pack, you always had that stick of chewing gum. Well, it turns out Gary and I opened up a box of 86 Tops last year, and let me tell you, the chewing gum does not age well.
Join us on the Ball Card Show,
the sports podcast for the sports collector.
All right, we are back. I was informed during the break that I misspoke. Surprise, surprise. We're actually going to be hearing from Altman when I said we're going to hear from Bickerstaff. And so if you didn't know, Kobe Altman spoke to the media today, and Sam had an incredible article on hoopswire.com. And Mr. Sable has it put up on his phone. We're going to play some audio here, and then we're going to talk about some offseason goals with this Cavs team. Mr. Sable, brother, take it away.
So basically, let me just cue this up by saying he's talking to Kobe Altman's addressed the young core because there's a lot of questions surrounding the whole, Colin Sexton and potential contract and just overall the impact of Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Isaac Okoro, just overall that young core and how they performed this year. And this is what is his title now? He's not technically the GM. Mike Gansey is. He's what president of basketball
operations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Here's Kobe Altman.
I love our core group. We had the youngest starting lineup in the NBA. And then when you get to the playoffs or play-in, we were the youngest. And that says a lot for that group that can impact winning at such a young age. So, no, I'm not in a rush to try to break that up. I want to see how far they can go. They deserve that runway. But when you think about the youth of this team, 24 years or younger for a lot of them, it's exciting. And it's not something that you're on a rush to break up, especially with the bulk of your talent still being on rookie scale contracts. I love our core.
And that was Kobe Altman. What do you guys think about that comment? Sam, let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, I think it's wise. You don't want to mess with success. And you do, as he used the phrase runway, you do want to use that kind of to just let them stay on the runway and take off together, as opposed to, obviously there's tweaks that you want to make. There's going to be a couple of moves that we want to make, but there's no reason for the big splashy move, because you can do it all year and to the trade deadline. For training camp in the fall with all your forces and hopefully healthy, and that makes sense. It's a good approach to just say, we're not going to, not only are we not going to gut the roster, but we intend to keep the majority of our guys because it worked.
And let me throw a wrench in that because I got a different idea. And here's what I think. And I know he goes on to say that Colin Sexton deserves to play with these guys. He deserves a shot to run with the guys that won, because, from his time here.
He did say that.
He said that. And, and I believe him. I believe that's like his thought at this moment. But here's what I also think going forward. I think everything they do from here on out is going to be to build around Mobley, Garland, and Allen. Okay. I think that Sexton's a piece and they would be happy to have him back. And he obviously would be happy to be here. I think we're going to get into that later. But I think everything from this point is going to be to build around those three guys. And if you look at this offseason right now, you have LeVert on a 1-year deal coming up. It's a movable contract. You have Love on the last year of a deal. It's a movable contract. You have a pick you can trade if you make the pick first, right, on that. So you have some assets that you can move around this offseason. You can sign and trade Sexton, and you can add those guys to those picks if you need to. So would I be surprised if the Cavs come back next year with this whole group and run it back with Sexton healthy, with LeVert healthy, maybe bringing back a Rubio or another veteran point guard? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the opportunity presents itself that the Cavs package some group of those players together to get a wing that they think can take them to the next level that won't disrupt the growth of Mobley, Garland, and Allen. Because I talked about this a lot this year, that I think the one thing the Cavs are missing right now is a guy who can score easy from the wing, a guy who can get his own shot whenever he wants, a guy who can get to the rim, a guy who can hit an outside shot. So I think if that opportunity were to present himself, and Kobe Altman has shown he will be aggressive when it's there, say a Donovan Mitchell, or, there's rumors that if things don't go well the first round of the playoffs, that Utah might break that thing up. A guy like that, or who knows right now who it could be. Look at all these players that came available in the NFL this offseason. We never would have thought. If that opportunity presents itself, I think we have the assets and the aggressiveness to go get them to add to these three. I think Mobley, Garland, and Allen are the only three untouchables on this roster right now.
I completely agree with everything you're saying, Jeremy, because I fully expect everyone to be back. Maybe Rubio gets re-signed. We know that he has a really good relationship with Jose Calderon, as Sam has mentioned before on this podcast, which is intriguing to bring him back, even though he wouldn't be back probably till Sam, November or December, maybe January.
Probably December, January, yeah.
So you don't want to tinker with anything. You don't want to mess anything up. because frankly, I don't think Colin Sexton has a trade value right now after coming off that injury. He didn't have it value last year because if he did, they would have traded him. Isaac Okoro's trade value, who really knows what that is, if anything. That draft pick, they have to take it. They have to select it, but then they can trade it. That's probably an intriguing asset in a way. The Levert and Love deal, albeit, are going to be expiring, as you were to read in Sam Amico's latest column on hoopswire.com today. Could be an intriguing option to sell this time, or not this time, next year, but in February of next year. Here is the interesting wrinkle to that thought process, Jeremy. When you brought up Donovan Mitchell, because you and I were tweeting back and forth about this a few days ago, and Sam, I need to get your input on this. If the Jazz get bounced, is there really a likelihood that he would become available? And if he does, do you really think the Cavs would ever entertain that option?
Well, first of all, I don't think he's going to be the guy who becomes available there. I think that's going to be Gobert. Mm-hmm. Secondly, yes, if he did become available, sure, the Cavs would entertain it. He'd be the kind of guy who would really move the needle. He's shown he can fit. He's not a guy who dominates the basketball. He could fit in next to Garland. And he's an all-star. So yeah, of course you would entertain that. And you're talking Sexton, Okoro, whoever you pick in the first round, probably. It would take quite a bit to get him, but sure, they would entertain it if he became available. I don't foresee that happening unless Mitchell pulls James Harden or I hate to single out Harden because other players have done this as well, but says I basically want to go play somewhere else. Then the Jazz would try to
Ben
trade
Simmons.
him. But I think that Gobert is going to be the guy they look to move.
Yeah, that's I agree with everything that was said, and not to just be a boring podcast. No one wants for the same takes agreeing with everyone, but it's so true.
Like, we agree too much, guys.
I think it's odd for me to agree with you three.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, I see
You're
that.
the black sheep.
Those that is our core. Garland, Allen, and Mobley, and you figure it out. You figure it out. So as the Cavs move to figure it out, what are some offseason goals, Sam, that you see the Cavs trying to address going into the start of the 2022-2023 season?
Well, they are going to assess based on his contract if Colin Sexton is a fit. We talked about this before the podcast.
Mentioning his name now, baby. He's gotten a lot of talk already in the second part of the show.
Well, when he went down, he was the face of the franchise, right? He's not going to come back. He's not going to come back as the number one guard. That's Darius Garland now. Darius Garland, Mobley, Allen, as Jeremy just said.
That's why they call it the not for long league. Oh wait, wrong sport. Sorry.
No,
wrong sport.
I give Sexton a lot of credit because he clearly took a step back when it came to his shot attempts and really trying to fit in, and really did a good job of fitting in those first 8 games. If you remember, last year he led the team in scoring at 24 points a game. This year, when he went down, he was scoring 16 a game, and that wasn't because he was playing worse. It was actually because he was playing better and proving to be a better fit. So that's something they're going to have to figure out. Obviously, there's going to be some contract stuff that they've got to figure out. Restricted free agent. Somebody else may sign him to a huge deal that the Cavs just don't want to match, and they'll sign him and trade him off. So
I'd be stunned if that happens, by the way.
What's that?
I'd be stunned if someone gives him an offer.
Yeah, and I said kind of the same thing about Lonzo Ball last year too, though. I thought for sure he was going to be with the Pelicans this year because they were a team on the rise with supposedly you would thought Zion Williamson would be back in Ingram. So regardless, I think that I would be surprised if Sexton wasn't at camp. Let me put it that way. I think that he'll be with the team through training camp, probably through the early season, and they'll see how it works. But I think that if any of these, Jeremy's right. You're not trading Garland. You're not trading Mobley. You're not trading Jared Allen. So everybody else is a level below that in terms of, untouchable. So that opens the door for Sexton, Love, and LeVert, all three of whom are on expiring deals. I'm sorry, Sexton's restricted free agent, but Love and LeVert, their expiring deals are very valuable around the league, them being veteran players. So I think it's a pretty good chance that they come back mostly intact for training camp. I think if somebody gets traded during the off season, it's going to be somebody like Jetty or maybe Okoro.
What about Sam? What about the potential of Okoro getting dealt somewhere?
I think there's a potential for that. If you do have Sexton and LeVert back, right? And then you have Markkanen, Okoro is still going to play, but obviously a Sexton LeVert backcourt, those players at that position are really going to limit his opportunities or his minutes theoretically, if he's the same player or even slightly better next year. And there are a lot of places out there that would love to have Okoro, that would give the Cavs something decent back, I'm sure. So I'm sure that's something that's going to be maybe not explored on the Cavs end, but I could see another GM calling and saying, what are you doing with Isaac Okoro? You got LeVert, you got Sexton. What are you going to do with this guy?
Chase isn't happy with this. I can see
No, I'm not. I still believe in Isaac Okoro.
I sure do too. I mean, I think that you have to give the guy 3 years. We saw Darius Garland from last year, this year, right? And nobody saw this coming with Garland. So I would have no qualms if the Cavs were to bring back Isaac Okoro at all.
You know who disagrees with both of you?
Jeremy.
Well, probably Jeremy, but Michael Regai definitely does.
Michael Regai is not an Okoro fan.
Yeah, listen, what did I say on our last podcast, though? The last one I did with you guys was, if he doesn't develop that corner three, he's not going to make it in the league. He's not, especially not with this team right now.
Again,
he has to hit that shot.
I agree with everything you're saying. He needs to get a consistent jumper or consistent corner three. I don't know if you listened to it, Jeremy, but Michael Regai just completely and utterly roasted Isaac Okoro last episode.
For like
only he
minutes.
can. Only he can do.
It was incredible, the amount of just disdain that Reg has on him.
I mean,
I love Reg.
It was funny.
So much.
Pantheon episode, I would say it was pretty fantastic.
So, guys,
having Regai on allowed me to floss my teeth because he talked about his disdain for Okoro for so long. I thought, well,
didn't you grab a shower and came back and you were still talking about him?
Took a little nap.
So let me say this on Sexton. I think the discussion with the Cavs this offseason is going to be, it's going to be two-pronged with Sexton. Do we want to play two 6-foot-ish guards a lot together? Do we want to start two 6-foot-ish guards? And do we think that Sexton can be happy coming off the bench if that's not the case, right? I think when you were talking about fit earlier, that's what the Cavs have to decide before they decide to commit long-term to Sexton is. Because obviously, like we said, Garland's the future of the team. He's the point guard. He's the new face of the franchise. He's what Sexton thought he was going to be. So I think that's going to be the discussion going forward. And like I said earlier, I think Kobe will be aggressive. He'll be measured because he's a smart, measured guy. But if he sees an opportunity out there, and Sexton is involved in it, Love, like we talked about, contract, stuff like that, I think he'll make the move. But I think the discussion is going to be, do you want to start two 6-foot guards? And if not, will Sexton be happy coming off the bench, being our Mike, our Vinny Johnson? We've talked about that ad nauseum, but will he be happy in that role? Because I think he will. I think that he will excel in that role if he'll accept that role.
That's the key. Is he going to accept it? To me, it sounds like he's the type of guy that is a team player that would accept it. You can't play both of those guys at the same time. We saw it last year, or I should say last year, the first 11 games of the season, it just wasn't working. I think they know that. It's just now it's depending on how they get that rotation, if he's going to buy in, how they're going to do it. The big difference there, and the one positive having Karis LeVert is he's 6'6". He's going to give you that extra height, that extra wingspan, the extra length in scoring if you have LeVert coming off the bench. The options could be endless if you decide to keep LeVert in the short term and if you sign Sexton for the short term and the long term. Sam, couldn't they easily just go ahead and sign Sexton just to could they do like a 1 or 2 year deal, or would it have to be a multi-year long-term deal?
It would have to be long-term, but I think it'd have to be 2 with an option.
2 an option.
Yeah. So, if that's kind of a short-term deal,
yeah,
and that would allow him to play. It's almost probably the kind of deal that he wants to, and then he can reprove himself all over again. And then that option year, end up getting an extension and all that. So assuming they re-sign him, I suspect it's going to be that kind of deal, 3 years with an option.
Yeah, a Lauri Markkanen type deal, probably. I think Lauri Markkanen type years and money if the Cavs do keep him. And we talked a little before the show, you guys, about how he was like passionate about wanting to be a Cavalier, right? He said he loves the city, he loves the team, he loves the guys, he wants to win here. It was as impassioned as I've heard anybody be about wanting to be here. So maybe that will play, John. We talked a minute ago about will he accept that role off the bench, which I think he would thrive in. It sounds like he might. It sounds like he's willing to do what it takes to help the team if he's being honest, which I don't have any reason to doubt that he was being honest in that plea.
Look, and it's super hard to teach someone how to be a team player. I don't know if I've seen a player who is selfish, who makes it all about themselves, all of a sudden be like this team first person who's willing to accept a lesser role and enjoy it. And I hope we make it work with Sexton. I hope it works out. I love his heart. I think his heart's very evident for love for basketball and for the city. I think he loves to see this team turn around. He sees the potential, and I don't think there's a better spot. Like, where else would you want to? I mean, if you're looking at young cores, right, and people that will help make your job easier, what better than 2 7-footers and another 7-footer? Like, it just feel like the current makeup for the Cavs will make his job super, super as easy as can be in the NBA. And so I hope the Cavs make it work. I'm a fan of Sexton. I wasn't at first. I was a big, we got to trade him. But with the emergence of Mobley and Garland's growth, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
To your point, Chase, and I think Jeremy said this earlier too.
No, it was me, only me. Jeremy doesn't make a good point.
If you watched that press conference of his, I think it was Saturday, Collins, the whole team did like exit interviews with the media. And Sam, I know you wrote about it on hoopswire.com, another great article there.
Let's go.
It was also a nice random dribbles. The passion that he had, and that's his personality too. He's a very outgoing guy, a very likable player, of how he was asked that question about wanting to be here. He didn't skip a beat of wanting to stay here. I mean, I don't know if you guys heard that, but I mean, I know Sam did, but he was just ready to go. He was like, he knew what he knew that question was going to ask. He was coached well and how he answered it. And I mean, he was ready to go. He wants to stay here. He doesn't want to leave. Yeah. You could also say that's also a negotiation tactic too for a contract, but it sounds genuine.
Yeah. Well, John, I have some news for you. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say the one thing that interests me is that I find intriguing about that whole situation is that Rich Paul represents Darius Garland, and Colin Sexton in the middle of the season is now also represented by Rich Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's getting the advice of the same guy that's advising Darius Garland. And it's a very interesting kind of dynamic now that they're both represented by really an agent who, I hate to say an agent's the most powerful. Rich Paul's really probably the most powerful agent, though, even though I don't like saying it, that's really the truth about him. And now both of those guys are represented by him.
Well,
so
that's dating Adele. So
yeah,
he dates Adele. I mean, he dates Adele, right?
That alone makes you the most powerful agent.
Exactly.
Well, John, you know what Colin Sexton and I have in common? That's not our awesome hair or our basketball skill.
You both played college ball.
No,
wait a second. I think, did Sam, you just say that Colin an actor too?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
That's all
no, we don't want to leave. I don't want to leave this podcast. but guys, it is time for this podcast to come to an end, unfortunately.
I bet Colin would be okay with leaving this podcast.
Well, this has just been such a delight. That does it for this episode of Cavs in the Break NBA podcast. That does it for the 2022 Cavs season, unfortunately. But thank you all so much for downloading and listening. This has been a banner year for the show, by far the best season of the show, and that is in large part to John Sable. So, John, thank you so much for joining us this season, my man.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Glad I could help you out.
Great.
Glad we were able to produce some good content, good conversations. Hope you guys listening out there enjoyed it as well. Sam, thanks for putting up with me, buddy.
Hey, you get my vote for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast MVP this year. So
hey,
is that
Jeremy,
only because, is that only because I promoted the website 4 times?
It's the competition, yes.
Yeah. Jeremy's flirted as being on the pod a couple times before. Your first time consistently being on the pod. Jay, thanks for joining us as well this season, my man. Thank you, sir. Have some exciting things in the works for you.
It was absolutely a blast. I mean, getting to work with legends like you three, every couple times a month, it's just amazing.
And Sam, this podcast has grown. It's almost a middle school now. We're the proud parents of this show, man. And this year we saw not only do we put out the most episodes in this NBA season, we saw the most downloads this season for our show. And this podcast set the single episode record for most downloads of a single episode in all of Press Play Network. This podcast did that with our Karis LeVert.
Beat Mike Lombardi.
It beat Lombardi, T.O. It beat Coach Jackson. It beat all the mugs. And that was like no one even special. It's just you all being special. Karis LeVert reaction podcast. And so just a ton of fun. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Shouts to our presenting sponsor all season long or half season, Aligned Health Center. They are just incredible. Shouts to Maria Jean Cola and Dr. Nick Big Rig, right, Jay?
My guy.
Got him.
Sir.
Yeah, they do great stuff. They're opening a new office here very soon. Make sure they're going to have a huge party. Make sure to check that out. They're good stuff. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. You can follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Get all of his works and writings at hoopswire.com. You can follow John Sable on Twitter and catch his podcast, Sable Bros, on the Baseline here on P3, and also Fox 8 Sports. John, how's the gig going, man?
It's going well, man. It's busy time of year. Draft coming up here for the Browns, even though they don't have a first round pick, but it's good. Never a dull moment in Cleveland sports, as we all know.
Never.
Me and my wife turned on the newscast the other night near the anchor, and she goes, "Oh, that's the guy with the really nice wife I used to work with." Exact words out of her mouth.
I still can't believe she said that to me when we did the Cavs on the Break podcast live at Whitey's. I'm like, really?
Oh, yeah.
God, what a small world. Like, I moved back from Tampa to Cleveland, and I meet Jeremy and his wife worked with my wife years ago. That's so crazy.
Yeah. And I completely forgot to mention our live show at Whitey's. That was also a ton of fun.
Yeah,
it was great.
We'll have to do that again.
We will for sure. Listen, everyone, I don't have our exact off-season schedule. I was talking to John earlier. We may do a couple NBA playoff episodes. I'm not sure. We probably won't be coming at you every week. We're going to hit on a couple things. If something big at the Cavs happens, we're going to be on it. Of course, we'll do a draft preview, probably a draft recap. And we'll just do what we can as information comes. There might be a few interviews here and there. But this has been such a great ride. Anyone have anything they want to say before we kind of close out this 2022 season?
The only thing I would want to throw out there is that the guys have been asking me, and yes, the answer is yes, there will be a Twitter poll on if Chase will have the same hair color next year when we start the pod.
I won't. You know what I'm going to do? When the pod starts, I'm going to have my ears pierced. I'm getting my ears pierced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Don't do that poll. Don't do that poll. It's going back to brown in the summer.
The people want to know. I can't.
They don't.
I make a living.
Chase, are you having
giving the people what they want?
Chase, do you have any middle school life crisis right now?
Middle school life crisis. Maybe. I don't know. Well, I want to give the Junkyard Dog Award to Sam Amico because he's the only one who's been on every episode this season. right? John and I've been able to, and Jeremy, to catch our breath and kind of do whatever. Sam, you get the Junkyard Dog Award, man. So good job by you this whole season, Sam. Way to go. Woo!
Let's go. Where's that $400,000 chain?
Sammy.
Yeah.
Mail.
Well, like we said, the guys who get the Junkyard Dog Award are never the superstars. They're just the guys who never win anything, so they give them the award.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because Moses Brown got it. I'm going down the list. Lamar Stevens got it.
I'm the Moses Brown of
Wade
the
got it.
podcast.
Brandon Goodwin get it? I'm not sure.
I don't
Those
think he
three
did.
definitely
He
got
and
it.
Lamar Stevens should have got minutes in those play-in games. That's all I'm going to say.
Well,
Should've got
those
more
three
minutes.
guys may not be with the team next year, so
It's a shame.
Yeah,
I'm a big Lamar Stevens fan. I like him a lot.
I think he might stay. Maybe.
Hope he does.
Yeah.
Hope he does. Well, that does it. Can we all do the Mike Breen take us out together? Can we try that?
I'd be delighted.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Mike Breen!
Mike Breen,
Take us
out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.